Hi everybody, on today Cooking with Ukulele Jay, I'm going to show you how to do same-day sourdough bread. Now, sourdough bread is always the rage among bakers. I am recent to sourdough bread, but I've gotten addicted after 4 failed attempts to actually create a starter. That's for another video, but once you have your starter going, you've been feeding it, you fed it overnight, and now it's ready for baking. We're gonna go ahead and show you how to do same-day sourdough bread. Normally, sourdough bread takes, to me, forever. I did a whole batch for a while and realized that it was a lot of work. And when I go to the store and see why homemade sourdough bread, or not only the store, but these street fairs are, 12, 14 bucks a loaf. Here in California, of course, because everything's more expensive. I realize it's because of the amount of time it takes. It's basically a day and a half just to get a loaf. By the time you rest it, do your 12 hours of proofing, and you do your stretch and folds, and then you cover it in your basket, you let it sit, you score it, you gotta heat up the oven, you gotta proof it. By the time you're done, that's a lot of work for one loaf of sourdough. There is nothing better than fresh sourdough bread. So let's get into how we do this and see the results after our same-day sourdough bread. Now the recipe is really simple. All you're going to need is some high-protein bread flour, not regular flour, you want the high-gluten bread flour. I'll put a link down below in the description of the one that I use. I use actually a couple, King Arthur. This isn't King Arthur, and I actually prefer this one a little bit better, and I'll have a link down to that. We use some salt, and that's fine sea salt, and we have our starter. And then what you need for tools is, I love this Dutch whisk. This is fantastic. I highly recommend you get one of these. We have our scraper, which I use for in the bowl. Make sure it's rounded so you can get around the edges. First thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take our bowl on a scale, and I've got my gram scale here. You wanna make sure it measures grams because we're gonna measure it exactly. And it's very important in baking to get exact measurements, sort of. I've cheated, done a little over, a little under. It actually still comes out about the same, but if you wanna replicate a recipe, you gotta go by the grams. So first thing we'll do is we're gonna add 300 grams of flour into here after we mix our starter, water, and some salt. And then we'll blend it all together and we'll start the stretch and fold process after we're done mixing our bread. So we have our starter, it's nice and bubbly. I fed it yesterday, and now we're gonna take 60 grams, just 60 grams of this, and we're gonna put it in our bowl. So take our starter, wanna keep it kinda neat, and we're gonna actually put this in here and we're gonna go to 60 grams. Now that little bit alone is almost 20 grams right there. So it's about 3, not heaping, but kind of 3 tablespoons. So let's see how close we get this. And we'll put this over to here. And there we are, 60 grams of our starter right down there on the scale. Now the one thing I want to mention before we add our water is get yourself a good instant thermometer. This is the Thermapen one by ThermoWorks. I think it's one of the best thermometers on the market. It's fantastic. And we want to make sure our temperature in our water is no more than 82 degrees and no less than 75 degrees. That's because you don't want to put freezing cold water in here. It's not only going to delay the process, you're not going to get good results. We're sitting at about 78 degrees, absolutely perfect. You just don't want that freezing cold water, and you don't want anything really hot because you'll kill any of the yeast that's actually in the starter. So we'll go ahead and we're going to add to this 200 grams of water, and I'm going to double it, right? So I'm going to go for 400 grams. So we'll turn this on, make sure it's at 0, and then we're going to go ahead and throw in 400 grams of water. Okay, we're right at 400 grams of water. Once you have your scale, everything's by grams. Next thing is we're doing 10 grams of salt for the single recipe. This is gonna be 20 grams because I'm doing it double. So we'll go ahead and add this in. I know about a shake is about 1 gram. Okay, so we're at 20 grams of salt for our double recipe. And then before we add our flour, we're gonna go ahead and mix this all together. And the reason I do this is because I wanna make sure when that flour gets in there, everything that's hitting the flour is mixed together well, and I don't have a big lump of salt sitting somewhere and somewhere else and then mixing the dough all together. If you're doing it especially by hand, you may not get a thoroughly mixed batch, which could lead to some different results. And then we have a nice consistency. It's kind of a milky, it looks like milk actually. And then we're gonna take our flour, add it into here, 300 grams, but we're gonna double it, so we're gonna go 600 grams. And now for this, I turned the scale around because once I start adding flour, I'm not gonna be able to see the scale from this side. So 600 grams, here we go. And it's quite a bit of flour, so don't be surprised, but we're gonna put in 600 grams. So 600 grams of flour is now in. We're now gonna take our Dutch whisk and we're gonna go ahead and mix it together. You can put a glove on, I've seen people use their hands, that's fine, but I'm gonna use the Dutch whisk and just kind of start slowly putting it in together. The nice thing about the Dutch whisk is that if things clump, you just push it out and nothing really sticks all over it. It's a great a great invention from the Dutch, I guess. And just go really slow with this. It's not a rush. If you go fast, you'll end up getting flour all over. I've done that before. So if you want to stay neat, clean, just take your time and just kind of slowly fold it in. And you'll notice that it starts, getting clumpy, and that's okay. You have a 20-gram buffer on a single batch or a 40-gram buffer, which means I could add up to another 40 grams of water. It depends on how thick this gets. If it gets to be almost too thick and you really can't do anything with it, you might have to add a little water, but you have to be careful because you don't want it to get too wet because then it gets super ultra sticky and makes a mess. And this is looking good. As you can see, the dough start all come together here. It's starting to get a little clumpy. It doesn't look too dry yet. The moisture is gonna still absorb into the flour. So we'll go ahead and mix it a couple more times, and then I'll go ahead and put my gloves on for the next phase. Now we have our gloves on. We're gonna go ahead and take this, and this will also keep it from sticking to your fingers and getting on your fingernails. But we're gonna take this, and we have a little bit of, you'll see, a little bit of this flour kind of still left in the bottom. So we're gonna go ahead and take this dough and just mix it all around like so. Squeeze it together and get that loose flour on the bottom in there, and it's all gonna come together and look really good. Should have a little bit of stick to it, which is great. You don't want it too dry. You can see this is actually making a nice dough ball. We're gonna go ahead and put this in here, and we're gonna let it sit for 30 minutes, and then we're gonna do our first stretch and fold. We're gonna do that 4 times over 2 hours, and then we'll show you the next step. Now, as a side note, I do have an oven here that does have a proofing feature. What I do is I wanna get this dough warm and get it start rising. So I have my proof oven on. It only heats to about 90 degrees. I'm gonna go ahead and throw this in here because it's only gonna be in here for a short amount of time, for 30 minutes. It won't get to 90. We're gonna take it out, do our stretch and folds, we'll put it back, and we're gonna keep this dough warm or warmer than the outside ambient air temperature, which right now is only about 66 degrees in here, which is actually really cold. So I wanna speed up the process. I wanna get this rising, and so I'm gonna put it in the proofing oven for the first 30 minutes. Okay, our first 30-minute timer went off, and so we're gonna open this up, and we're gonna take this, and we're gonna do our first set of stretch and folds. And what I suggest is I get a little bit of water in my hands, not a lot, but that way it helps with the sticking on this. You just wanna basically stretch it like so in the bowl, and then we're just gonna fold it over in quadrants. We're gonna take this first quadrant, we're gonna pull it up, and you can see how it nice and stretchy. We're gonna fold that in the middle, turn it, take our second quadrant, pull that up, and get that nice and stretchy and fold that in. Turn it again to our third quadrant, reach down in there, and we're gonna pull it and stretch it up again. And I just use the weight of the dough to get it stretchy, like so. Then we're gonna fold that in, and then we'll do our last quadrant, which we'll take that and stretch that up. It doesn't have to be perfect or look pretty, but this shows it's got some good gluten forming, and then we'll take that and fold that over. And then we're good to go with our stretches. Then we'll take our towel covered up. 1 down, 3 to go. Okay, we're on our last stretch and fold. This is it, the finale. Then we're gonna go ahead and take our basket, which picked up on Amazon, and a little trick that a lady showed me using one of these shower caps. Shower cap's gonna go over here, and we're gonna go and put that in the proofing oven for about 3 hours. You'll see some air pockets going on, and we'll have a really nice loaf ready to break. Then we're gonna put this in the banneton basket, which is what I showed you. And we're gonna go and take this over. And now we're gonna shape this into our loaf. And it's looking really good. Put this loaf into our banneton basket. And there we have our nice loaf ready for proofing, covered up like so. Put our towel on it. It's gonna go in our proofing oven. It's only about 90 degrees, and we're gonna leave that for 3 hours. Now, to save us time and prepare for tomorrow, we're gonna go ahead and add 50 grams of flour, high protein flour. This is our bread flour, into our starter. We're gonna let that sit overnight. That's gonna let this grow to handle another day of baking. And we're at 50. We're gonna add 50 grams of filtered water, and we're at 100 grams. We're gonna go ahead and take this, and we're gonna mix this up thoroughly. And you can see we're all done. It's actually almost like a thick kind of pancake batter. We're at 3,000 milliliters. This is probably gonna go up to 5,000 or 6,000 milliliters, and it'll then start rising a little bit more, and then it'll drop down. And when it starts dropping down, that's the time when we're ready to use the starter. Okay, so we did our first rise, and you'll see there's little bubbles on here, which is exactly what you want. If you don't have any bubbles at all, you need to go ahead and let it rise some more before we go into the second and final proofing period, which will be about 2.5 hours. So with this, we're gonna go ahead and take this, make sure it's in a ball now. We're actually shaping. I'm actually not gonna add any flour onto this. Give it a couple pulls here. We're gonna do it for another 2.5 hours. So we're done with our second rise, and I'm really happy to report this came out looking beautiful. It did rise up almost the top, and we've got a really nice looking dough. And what we're gonna do is we have the oven heating up to 450 degrees inside the oven at 450 and let this sit for about 20 minutes to get up to temperature. We're gonna then take it out, put parchment paper inside this Dutch oven, and then we're gonna go ahead and put our bread in here, and we're gonna bake it for 20 minutes. We're then gonna take this off for the final 15. Now, keep in mind, everybody's different when it comes to baking, your altitude, humidity, how hot your oven gets. It might say 450, have you checked it? Maybe it's at 410. So there's a lot of variables. So this is just a general guideline. So I do it at 450, put it in for 20 minutes, and then I'm gonna take this off, and I'm gonna watch till it gets golden brown, and you can let it get to, the various shades you like. You want it a little bit darker, more of a crunchier top. You can leave it off for that total of 15 minutes. Or you may look at 5 or 7 minutes, say, oh, wow, this is looking pretty good, and then take it out. At the end of the day, you want to take it out and let it rest and cool down for at least an hour, but I'd recommend to get the full cook so you don't have any raw dough inside. You go for the 20, and then you go for the 15 after you take the top off. Before I continue on, please make sure you like and subscribe to my channel. I've got everything going on for home cooks, private chefs, backyard barbecuers, cooking, and now baking, and especially when it comes to my knife sharpening. It is one of my most popular topics when it comes to my channel. So if you like knife sharpening and want to learn about sharpening knives, because you really should learn how to sharpen your knife in your kitchen. It saves you a lot of money, and it's nice having a knife that you keep razor sharp all the time. But check that out in my other videos. Hope you guys enjoy it. Leave a comment if you'd like to see other things. I'll be doing pretzels next on the list. So if you guys like hot pretzels, I love hot pretzels. That'll be coming up. The other thing I want to give you as a tip is when you have gloves in the kitchen, I recommend getting a pair that is long like this that goes on the forearms. I'm not pushing a particular brand, doesn't matter. Just get one that protects you like this. As funny as it sounds, I can't tell you how many times, and you may have been there, I go in to get something hot out of the oven, I have gloves on, and I touch something over here, and just, oh, why did that happen? Because I didn't have any of the long gloves on. So I love these things. Get yourself a pair that are, these are up to 900 degrees Fahrenheit, which is more than you'll need in an oven at 450. If it touches it, it's not gonna burn you. Very important for safety. So just a little tip, get the long pair, don't burn yourself. I do recommend you get a good timer in the kitchen. I would not rely on a cell phone for a lot of reasons. Trusting my cell phone that I left across the house and it was going off, and an hour later my wife says, why is your phone still beeping? And oh my God, and then there was it, food was gone. So I have the ThermoWorks time stack. This is my favorite timer in the kitchen. 4 different timers, you can set them for different times. You can even record your voice on it if you like to hear yourself, and it'll actually tell you whatever you record in it, or it'll just go off with the alarm. So I set these time stack, 2 timers. I have a 20-minute actually, and then you take the top off and you go 15 minutes. So a total of 35 minutes. You hit 1. When it goes off, you know to take the lid off, hit the other, and you're good for 15. That way you don't mess up your timing. It is very loud. You will hear it throughout the house, and it stays on all the time. That's the only thing that I really wish ThermoWorks would do is fix this with an off button, but when you put it in, it's on all the time in your kitchen. The battery does last a while, probably a good 6 months. And it's an incredible timer, works great, and I highly recommend that you get one. I will have a link down below in my description, including everything you can get at my Amazon store and links directly to other products if they're not available in my store. 450 degrees on our oven. We're gonna take out our Dutch oven. It's a beautiful Dutch oven. We're gonna set our parchment paper inside of our Dutch oven. We're gonna go ahead and get our dough inside there. We're gonna go ahead and dust it with some of that rice flour. Then we'll go ahead and use our time stack, and we'll go ahead and get our timer started. Let's get this out and get going. Okay, here we go. Dutch oven, take this off. I'm gonna put in our paper, like so. And then we're gonna go ahead and take this off. Be very careful, you don't wanna touch the Dutch oven. And we're gonna put this inside, but first we're gonna score it, and because it's not cold, it kind of is difficult. So just give it your best shot. with your score device, and we're gonna go ahead and slice it along this side from here to here. Try to have it poof open that way. And it may be a little tough because it is moist, but just do your best effort to just kind of slice it a little bit at a time like this, all the way around. And I can see it actually is slicing open, which is great. And we have a nice score, and I'm gonna show you that right now in a close-up. Then we're gonna take this and put it inside the Dutch oven. Rather than our hands, we're gonna use some scrapers, and then we'll put it right inside the Dutch oven like so. Now we're gonna cover up our bread in our Dutch oven. Please make sure you remember to put your gloves on. I know someone's gonna grab it and go, I forgot the gloves. And we're gonna go in now and put it in the oven. And now we're gonna go ahead and set our timer. First timer is 20 minutes. Start and stop, and there we go. 20 minutes, we're gonna take it out, take the top off, let you have a peek, go for another 15 with the top off. Then we're gonna let it rest, we're gonna cut it open, we're gonna slather it with some nice Irish butter, and we're gonna take a bite and see how it tastes. Now I have a little surprise. If you remember earlier, we fed our starter for tomorrow. Now check this out. Oh yeah, look at that rise. We started out down here around the 3,000 milliliter, and now we're up to 6,000 milliliters. We've actually doubled this starter with only 25 grams of flour and 25 grams of water. Remember, that's high protein bread flour. And you can see this has got tons of holes in here. That fermentation's really going well. And then we'll be good to go for our next batch, which is gonna be my hot and soft pretzels. Sourdough pretzels, of course.
Flip to right corner.
And now it's ready to take the bread out of the oven. That was perfect. So let's take this out and see what we got. Oh, that looks so good. Oh yeah. And let's go for the reveal. Look at that. Paper's not burnt, perfect. And now we have an absolutely fantastic sourdough loaf. And this looks amazing. I've got a nice crispy top on here. You don't want to get this too hard on top. You can. I like mine just crispy enough, but not super crunchy. But this is going to be really nice. It's going to cool down for about the next hour or so. Listen to that. Super crispy top. This is gonna be the real test. When we cut it open, we wanna see if we've got those nice nooks and crannies, those holes in there, so we can take that Irish butter and melt that on the inside. I cannot wait to taste this loaf. Okay, so we've had our loaf resting on our rack to cool down. It is cooled down now, fairly cool. It still feels a little warmth on there. And this is absolutely a gorgeous loaf. I am really happy. Look at the bottom of this. Absolutely perfect the way it should be with that golden color. Beautiful golden dome on here. Beautiful golden dome on the top. We've got our cut we made so that bread was able to expand nicely. We didn't get a lot of exploding in other areas. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut this now, and we'll take a piece. I'm just gonna cut it in half. Let's do this. Nice top. And it's like butter in the middle. You're seeing it with me first. We should have a nice holy inside. I hope it looks good. If not, sometimes you win, sometimes you don't. Oh yeah, look at that. Huh. Absolutely amazing. That is exactly what you want, the consistency. We've got our holes, not too dense, but I also don't like really huge holes because all the butter falls through. So let's go ahead and take a slice of this here. Smells amazing. So nice top on that. So I'll go ahead and take a half. And you got that nice crispy bottom on there as well. Take a nice, ooh, it's warm under there. And then got to take Irish butter, the Kerrygold, my favorite. And a little trick is I set this on top of this as it was cooling, and it makes it nice and soft. And we're gonna put some on here. And here we go. Let's give it the taste test. Crunchy top. Oh my God, it's sour. Oh, my starter, this sourdough starter, has a really nice sour to it. I really didn't think it would be that sour without going for the 24 hours I usually do. I don't think I'm gonna do sourdough bread ever again for 24 hours. I did this in 6. It's absolutely amazing, it really is. I could eat this whole loaf right now. So that is the same day sourdough. It can be done very well. I have the recipe down below. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'll see you on the next one. Smoke on, baby.